Why is your clinic so much better than the ones that are already out there?
We do it differently. Our protocols are different. We all are so well-versed in psychedelic medicines. Our doctor's first LSD experience was in 1957 in a clinical study. The medicine's a catalyst. It's a tool to get you to grab the reins of your own life so you can really propel forward in the right direction, along with meditation, breath work, healthy lifestyle changes.
Is it only going to be ketamine for your vision of how this works?
No.
Ketamine now, because it's FDA approved. MDMA will go next. And I used all of these compounds to heal. I quit a 6-year opioid addiction from a DMT experience.
That's impossible. So that's insane. You're like a miracle. That's amazing.
What if I told you that everything you know is just the beginning? Beyond the veil of the ordinary lies a realm of hidden knowledge, ancient wisdom, and untapped potential. A place where consciousness expands, reality bends, and the impossible becomes possible. You weren't meant to stay asleep. You were meant to awaken. Open your mind, remember who you truly are, and step with me beyond the frequency 369. Hey, before we start the episode, if you're on YouTube or Rumble, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. You want to make a comment? Go for it. It's America. If you catch me on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, hit me with those 5 stars. I appreciate the support. Let's start the show. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Frequency 369. I'm your host, Cesar Pagan. Now, on this show, we're always pulling back the curtain on reality, looking at hidden knowledge, ancient wisdom, and the power of consciousness to transform our lives. But today, I'm excited because we're diving into a conversation that gets right to the heart of healing and awakening. My guest today is someone who embodies that transformation. His name is Charles Patti. And if you don't already know who he is, you're about to meet a man whose story is as real and raw as it gets. Charles has walked through the darkest valleys: addiction, depression, trauma, and substance abuse. And he came out on the other side, not just surviving, but thriving. So what actually turned it all around for him? Psychedelic medicines. Tools that helped him reconnect with himself, rewire his life, and now help others to do the same. Charles is the founder and CEO of My Self Wellness, a groundbreaking clinic that's helping people heal with psychedelic-assisted therapy. He's also the co-founder of Warriors of Consciousness, a nonprofit dedicated to making these powerful healing modalities available to those who can't afford them. So what I love about Charles is how perfectly his journey aligns with what we're all about here on Beyond the Frequency 369. It's about remembering who we truly are, moving past the illusion of limitation, and finding the light that's been inside all of us all along. His story is proof of what's possible when we embrace that. So let's get into it. Let's get to know Charles Patti. Charles, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
Cesar, thanks for having me on, man. It's an honor.
Awesome. Fantastic. Like I said to all my guests, I'm in gratitude for you gifting me your time to sit here to talk to not just me, but also my audience, drop some gems, share your experience and your stories, and hopefully this conversation will trigger some kind of remembrance for somebody and motivate them to do something that maybe they just need a little bit of that spark, right? So, Charles, I know a lot of people see the work that you're doing, helping others heal, guiding people into this new space of wellness. But I want to take it back to the beginning, because before all of this light, there were some really dark days for you. Can you share with us your origin story, what life was like when you were caught in addiction, depression, and trauma, and at what moment in your life was it that led you to seek a different path, please?
For sure. Wow, it's going to be deep here, man.
Yeah.
So really, like, it all kind of actually, like, even before the actual healing part, it started off with when I was really young, about 6 years old, my father passed away from lung cancer. And that really sent me on, like, being a young boy like that, on a negative spin where I was feeling depressed and having anxiety. And I had this crippling fear of death ever since I was very, very young, where it got to the point I would literally wake up in the morning and I'd be like, am I going to die today? And it was a lot for a young kid to go through. And my first stepfather was an alcoholic. And so there was alcohol all over the house. We had beer coolers. He was always sending me to go get beers for him, like when I was like 7, 8 years old. And the thing is every time I got a beer for him, I was allowed to take a sip out of it. And so like I would always like take little sips of beer, and I would start feeling this sense of relief, like this warm feeling where I was like, oh man, like this is making me feel so much better. I think this is what I need in my life. And so my alcohol abuse started at a very young age, and me finding out how much relief that gave me when other things started to come into the equation, smoking cannabis at a very young age, moving into cocaine use by the time I was 4, pain pills, benzodiazepines like Xanax. And then when I was around 18, Oxycontin hit the market, and I dove deep into that. I became addicted to Oxycontin. It became a very expensive habit. And my dealer was like, listen, man, like I've got this other stuff and it's cheaper. It's called heroin. And, you can do this and it'll last you longer. It won't be so expensive. And so like it was a process of going deeper and deeper into my addiction, where it got to the point where I was using IV heroin on a daily basis. I was smoking crack cocaine. I was taking handfuls of Xanax throughout the day. And listen, like, we can talk about addiction, but really what it boils down to is a traumatic experience. And then I was self-medicating. So whether it's, drugs or alcohol or food or sex or whatever, substance abuse or addictive personalities is literally just a symptom of an underlying issue. And that's what I was taking care of. So I had dabbled in psychedelics in my younger years. I had, taken LSD and psilocybin mushrooms and stuff, but I was always using them recreationally. I never used them therapeutically. And, it was a process of like me over a 20-year span having a train wreck for a life. I was in and out of trouble constantly. It was always for substance abuse issues and DUIs and stuff like that. But when I got into like actually, it's like my early 30s. I was at my house and I had a buddy that came over to bring me a bunch of MDMA, and he brought another guy with him. And so like we started off the night partying that night, and I took some MDMA, and I didn't know I was going to have a breakthrough experience that night. I thought it was just like any other night where we're going to be partying. But right before the MDMA started to kick in, this guy busted out a bag of what it looked like to be ketamine to me. And I was like, is that ketamine? And he's like, here, man, you want to try some? It's not ketamine, but it's very much like it. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I did a little bit. And all of the sudden, it was like this perfect storm. It was like the MDMA and this other dissociative kicked in at the exact same time. And the room broke down to a quantum state. I could see all of the energy humming and vibrating and everything. It's like everything wasn't solid. I got to see everything at its energetic state. I stood up in the middle of the living room and I looked at everybody and I said, if I didn't know what the universe was about before, I know what it's about now. I said, everything's made of energy. And I'm so full of positive energy right now. And I sat down in the chair and I looked up, and there was this geometric portal like opening above me on the ceiling. And I felt like I was being loaded down into a slingshot where I was shot straight out of my body into deep space. And I looked down and I was a being made of light. And then I like looked around and I could see like all these stars, and like it was like I was in the middle of a galaxy. And here we go. And then so I realized I was looking out of a window. And I turned around and I was on a ship, and there were these beings there who appeared to be like, they were standing on 2 feet, and they were these amphibious, like frog beings. And there was a male and a female, and I'm freaking out. I'm just like, am I dead? What's going on? And the female one came over to me and started telepathically communicating with me. And she was like, Charles, everything's gonna be okay. And like telepathically, I was told that night that like I was supposed to stop taking drugs and I was supposed to stop living the life that I was living because I was supposed to heal myself so I could help other people heal. And I was told about the oneness of everything and how we're all a part of the same collective consciousness, and that separation is an illusion, and that like we're all it, just pretending that we're not, basically. And so like through this conversation, there's these doors over on the side of the ship, and they start to open up, and this like fog starts coming out. It's like dry ice smoke. And all of a sudden, Jesus walked out. And like, listen, I'm not coming from a religious standpoint. That's not my message. I'm not sitting here trying to preach to anybody. It's just my experience. And I don't even classify myself as a religious person. I'm a very spiritual person. But he started walking over, and I'm this being made of light, and I like go over and I put my hand down on Jesus's arm, and it goes, and it was like the explosion of the most loving, euphoric feeling I had ever felt in my entire life. And from that second forward, I knew that everything was going to be okay. My fear of death went away. I had this overwhelmingly loving feeling for myself, which I had never had before for everybody else, because I knew that we were all one. And, you know, there was more messages about like what I was supposed to do with my life. And then all of a sudden, I'm back in the living room and everybody's kind of just looking at me. And my ex-wife looked at me and she goes, "You were just acting really crazy. You're not allowed to do that anymore." And that was like this massive awakening moment that I had, where the first thing I said to everybody, and I looked at him, I said, "Everything I've ever believed is a lie." Like up to this point, like everything I've ever believed in is a lie in a way, because, you know, that was a moment that I'll never forget and shaped my life in very different ways, or many different ways.
I beautifully said. Wow, that definitely was unexpected, but very refreshing. So let me ask you this though. So you've encountered these beings at that point of your life. Has that been something that repeated itself later on in your life as you're doing the good work, so to speak?
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, like the thing is that, you know, it wasn't just that experience. That was a catalyst. And let me tell everybody out there, like, I didn't get my life together after that night. Okay. I was almost more lost than I was going into it, because I'm like, am I crazy? Did I lose my mind? And this is why, when it comes to psychedelic therapy, that integration is so important. Having somebody to process these actual healing experiences with. And it's one of the things that we're very passionate about, my self-wellness, with what we do, because I know how lost somebody can feel if they don't have somebody to actually process these healing experiences with them. I had to integrate myself, and I really spent like, after that night, I'm like on Google and I'm like typing in like aliens and ketamine and like trying to figure out what happened to me. And all of the sudden, DMT kept popping up when I'm researching this stuff, right? And I'm like, DMT, Rick Strassman, the spirit molecule. And I'm like, well, I got to watch this. And so I watched the spirit molecule, and there was a doctor named Rick Strassman who did clinical trials at the University of New Mexico in the 90s. And he was giving people intravenous DMT. And during this study, what kept happening is that a lot of the participants, almost all of them, kept making contact. They kept having these experiences with beings. And Rick kind of I've spoke to Rick since all of this. We did a podcast a long time ago. And, you know, they shut down the studies because like he couldn't explain what was going on. Like he didn't want to like push people out to this ledge and not be able to explain like, hey, listen, like, you know, I know what's going on. So it kind of like stopped at that point. But me watching the spirit molecule actually helped me integrate my experience, because I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not crazy. There's other people that are having these same kind of experiences. And so I was like, I need to get some DMT. And I did. I got some, and I started having more experiences like the one that I described that first night. Different beings, different entities. The underlying message that I kept getting over and over again is that like they were worried about us as human beings on this planet, and that we needed to get our lives together. And I was supposed to help people heal. It was this reoccurring message I kept getting over and over and over again. And so I was like, all right, maybe there's something to this. Like I kept falling off though. You know, it's like, you know, I would get there and I'd be like, okay, I'm like, you know, I'm on a mission here. And then I would start self-medicating again. It was always alcohol that brought me back to everything. And what ended up happening was I couldn't figure out why I was doing what I was doing. And I ended up getting hooked on opiates again. I was hooked on heroin again. And I was like, you know what? I'm in the middle of a heroin addiction. And I'm like, I need to get some DMT, and I'm going to figure out what's going on with me, why I can't stop doing this. And so I did it. And I went to an alternate universe, or a parallel reality, where all of these beings were there. There was like thousands of them. And they looked kind of like Dr. Manhattan. And there was one of them that had like, I guess he was like the guy in charge, you could say. And he had this red ruby where his third eye would be on like his forehead. and they were all cheering and chanting for me. And they're like, it's not too late. You can do it. It was like out of the Adam Sandler movie where he's like, you can do it, right? And so like I come out of the experience and I'm bawling. I'm like crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, all of this was real. I really was supposed to get my life together because I'm supposed to help people. And I got some Suboxone, an ounce of cannabis. I locked myself in a bedroom for a week and I detoxed myself and I stopped taking heroin. And then so like on and off, like, okay, well, alcohol is okay. Still, I could drink a little bit. And then like, it would always end up leading me back to cocaine. And then so I was just like, all right. I always heard Terence McKenna, who's a psychonaut, philosopher, pioneer in the psychedelic space, very largely into dimethyltryptamine or DMT and psilocybin mushrooms. But he was always talking about this 5-gram trip. He's like, 5 grams in pitch black silence, meditate on it, secrets of the universe and all of this stuff. And so I was like, all right, man, that's it. And it worked for the heroin. Now I'm going to take care of the alcohol and the cocaine. And so I got 6 grams of psilocybin, did it, and then locked myself in my bedroom, crawled under my comforter in pitch black, and I started to meditate. And all of a sudden I started to leave my body and I went out into the middle of the universe where I became one with everyone and everything. And I became one with God and realized that we are all it, that we are one collective consciousness, that separation is an illusion. I am the I am, and so are you, and we're all it. We're just pretending that we're not. And so like, I came back down into my body that night after the experience, and I'm like, oh my gosh, every time that I'm drinking and I'm taking cocaine, I'm poisoning God. And I was just like, okay, crying and I'm apologizing and I'm so sorry. But it was like me apologizing to myself in a way because I'd been abusing myself like this all of these years. And I was just like, well, I guess if we're all it, I can manifest anything that I want, can't I? And so I was like, well, I am going to manifest a healing organism that's going to transform humanity to a higher state of consciousness. And so I started going to the gym and I started eating healthier because it wasn't just drugs and alcohol for me. I weighed 111 pounds more than I do right now at one time because I was addicted to food and sex and gambling and anything to take me outside of myself. But I started doing all of these practices that I promote out there for everybody else to take part in, which is like breath work, meditation, going to the gym, eating all organic, drinking spring water out of glass bottles. Like, I used to be one of the most unhealthy people on the planet. And now I flipped that into this, I'm going to become one of the most high vibrational, healthy people on the planet. Because listen, for everybody that's listening out there, people with addictive personalities or substance abuse issues or stuff like that, you're not defected and there's nothing wrong with you. You're just self-medicating. But if you can flip that addictive personality and harness it properly in the right direction, we are relentless savages that can literally accomplish anything that we put our minds to. Like when I was starting to build my company like 6 years ago, and listen, and I want to do another thing real quick before we get into it is
please,
when we first were talking, right, and we did edit it, I used to be the chief education officer of My Self Wellness. And the reason is because I couldn't be the owner of My Self Wellness because I was leaving a Lil Boosie concert years ago and I had an 8 ball of cocaine on me. And so the thing is that I got arrested for that and it turned me into a convicted felon. And so I worked my butt off and did everything that I was supposed to. But as a convicted felon, I couldn't own a medical facility that was prescribing scheduled drugs. And so I went through a process and did be the brand ambassador and the chief education officer of My Self Wellness because I could do those things. But then the state of Florida, after a 2-year process, finally granted me an exemption so I can actually take my right as owner and CEO of the company. And so for everybody that's out there that has had something that they went through like that, you can do it. You can do the right things and manifest a life of your dreams. If I am the I am, and so are you, and we're all it. We can manifest anything that we want. We are limitless beings, and the only limitations that we have are the ones that we place upon ourselves. And so it's like, listen, like Alan Watts has it's called The Dream of Life. And it basically is about how like we're all, God manifest or living this dream. And I give people the analogy. Imagine if you were like the architect of the universe, or if you were the creative everything, right? you built this amazing roller coaster ride. It's the most amazing, fantastic roller coaster ride you could ever possibly imagine going on. It had ups and downs and trials and tribulations and darkness and light and all of these different emotions and feelings. It's like you would want to go for a ride on that roller coaster, but you wouldn't want to go for a ride if you already knew what was going to happen. So during a DMT experience years ago, I had this massive download that came through during my experience where it's like, we're the droplets of water in the ocean of consciousness, and we put ourselves to sleep to forget who we truly are so we can experience the experience of life. So like, this is just God having a conversation with God, pretending that we're
Absolutely. Wow. You know, Charles, from your perspective, like how do psychedelics actually work? I mean, not just like on the mind, but in the soul.
So in the soul, for me, like psychedelic medicines gave me the ability to love myself enough to actually want to change my life, man. And like, listen, like I've always been a seeker, but I was always like agnostic. I was like, oh, everything sounds great. And I want to believe. I was raised Catholic, which is a completely different perspective than what I have now. And listen, and I'm not trying to sell anybody on anything, okay? I'm not sitting here like I'm the guru and I know all and Charles is the almighty or like I'm God. Or it's like, that's just a concept anyways. But it's just my experience. And that's all I'm trying to share with people. I'm not trying to sell you on anything. And so like, it's not just that it gave me the ability to love myself, but like everything is energy, everything is frequency, right? And so like we are vibrational beings. I believe that we are vibrating before we heal through our trauma at a very low vibration, very low frequency. And when you take on the vibration of different psychedelic compounds like psilocybin mushrooms or ketamine or DMT, I truly believe that ketamine and DMT are the two highest vibrational crystals on the planet. And so when your body takes on that vibration, you start to vibrate at a higher frequency and you start to shed off the lower vibrational stuff that no longer serves you anymore. And then also, like, listen, like, whenever we've had any kind of traumatic experiences in our life or just through the course of life, our neural pathways get damaged in our brain. And when the neurons are trying to flow through these pathways, they start to bounce off the interior walls, which can cause a lot of the symptoms of depression, anxiety, PTSD. Ketamine, DMT, other psychedelic compounds, they're literally going in and physiologically remapping and restructuring the neural pathways in the brain. Ketamine specifically also goes in and it hits the receptors that create our dopamine, our feel-good chemical. It's what motivates us to get out of bed in the morning. So your brain starts producing higher levels of dopamine naturally. But with the neurological healing and the increased dopamine levels, it sends you into, like, if you meditate on these medicines, a therapeutic dreamlike state or a psychedelic experience where people are processing past traumas, having psychospiritual experiences, and getting to the root issue and the root cause of why they have the symptoms to begin with. So like these medicines, which they are medicines, and I want to specifically say that, not drugs, medicine, are getting away from the pharmaceutical paradigm of let me treat your symptom, and it's actually getting to the root issue and the root cause of why people have the symptom.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned that they're medicine and not drugs. Do you think that the reason the elites and the Olive Garden call them drugs is to kind of tell you drugs means bad things, so stay away from these things? Is that why they're called drugs?
I mean, listen, man, Joe Rogan talks about it and he's like, drugs, you can put a label on that's just like under such a big umbrella. It's like, cough syrup's a drug, nicotine's a drug, caffeine's a drug. I drank some caffeine this morning with my coffee, of course. But it's like, but then you have like drugs that are like really bad for you, right? Like cocaine. And even though I know there are some medicinal uses that we'll find out in the future for cocaine, but like methamphetamines and like heroin and stuff. And it's like these drugs numb you and they kind of keep you asleep and they don't let you process anything. It just kind of keeps you in this slumber. But then you have drugs or medicines that are actually good for you, like psychedelics that do neurological healing to your brain, that, increase your dopamine levels or have, enhance your serotonin or increase your serotonin levels, like all of these kind of things. Like, there's a very positive thing that's behind a lot of these medicines. And listen, like For sure. I definitely think that when you're talking about healing people, there's no reoccurring revenue there. And so there are, people out there that would rather have society trapped on a hamster wheel rather than actually give them the relief that they're looking for. But I also think that this paradigm is shifting. And I think that, there's a lot of psychedelic research that's coming out that's showing the efficacy of these medicines. I mean, listen, we have legal access to ketamine right now, which is incredible, but I'm a very big fan of the idea of MDMA going through FDA approval for PTSD treatment soon. MAPS, which turned into Lycos, did a study on MDMA, and they gave it to people that had like uncurable PTSD, like some of the worst severe cases of it, right? And during this clinical trial, 2 out of 3 people that were given the MDMA were cured of their diagnosis of PTSD. So we're talking like, almost 7 out of 10 people that went through these trials ended up getting the diagnosis taken away. But like MDMA is going to help a ton of people. Ketamine is already helping a ton of people. Psilocybin mushrooms are going to help a ton of people. But even like DMT, there's a company called Algernon out there that's doing studies with DMT for stroke victims. And they're actually finding that, the neurological damage that's been done when somebody's had a stroke, if you give them a microdose of DMT very quickly after that, it can actually help. And so like there's tons of medicinal properties to these medicines. And like they're all Schedule 1 right now, which is something that's classified as not having any medicinal properties to it. So
Really?
We all know that isn't the case. All of the studies are showing this. So I really feel strongly that we'll be seeing a transition in this paradigm very soon.
Absolutely, Charles. PTSD. I'm a military veteran, and I know a lot of folks that even if they did 2 to 4 years in the military, still came out with PTSD. Are you or have you worked with other veterans to help cure their PTSD in some fashion?
So honestly, like we have access with ketamine right now to a medicine that is helping people with PTSD to a level that nobody at my clinic, including our medical director, who's our head psychiatrist, and he's been practicing for over 50 years, has ever seen before. This stuff is pulling veterans and people straight out of suicidal ideation. My favorite story to tell is I had a Marine that came in and he was like, listen, man, I'm going to give it 1 shot, 1 treatment, even though it's a 6 treatment protocol. And he's like, and if this one doesn't help me, I'm going to go home and I'm ending because I can't take this anymore. And I'm like, just give us a second. Let me work with you. Does his first treatment, goes into the room, and after he comes out of his session, I walk in and he's just bawling. He's got tears coming down his eyes. And I'm like, hey, man, how was it? And he goes, I turned into a bird. He goes, I was flying over the landscape and it was so beautiful. And I don't know how to explain it, but everything's connected. The answer is love. And I don't want to hurt myself. It was like a light switch had gone off. And so like with, our nonprofit, which actually Christina and I have like momentarily shut down for a minute, just because I wasn't really raising money through it, but we were giving tons of treatments away, which was the Warriors of Consciousness. And we'll activate it up here shortly again. But the thing is that Christina, who's my other half, and I have actually donated over 100 people free treatments at our facility, tons of military personnel. We are collaborating with another nonprofit organization here locally where we've been putting veterans through treatments for free. And almost all of the veterans that we have treated with ketamine we've pretty much got all of them off all their pharmaceutical medications. We've got them away from drinking. We've got them away from pretty much everything that was ailing them one way or another in life. Like I had a guy who's like a high profile vet, and it was after his 4th treatment. And like, this was a guy who didn't think, he was like, this is crazy. Like, oh yeah, sure. Psychedelics are going to help me, whatever. And after his 4th treatment, he comes and he knocks on my office door and he's like, hey man, you got a minute? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, why isn't the VA telling everybody about this? He goes, they had me on 6 different medications and I'm already off all of them already. And I still have 2 treatments left. He's like, what's going on, dude? And like the guy had a traumatic brain injury and everything. And like, we're seeing amazing results with that. But like, listen, I'm not saying that the VA is a bad organization by any means. I think they help a lot of veterans, and that's not what my message is. But I think there's a lack of education now here. And I think it goes back to what you're talking about with the stigmas that these are drugs. even though, you ready? Ketamine is an FDA approved anesthetic that was FDA approved in 1970. It's one of, if not the safest, least toxic anesthetics on the market. It's so safe. It's the number one choice for pediatric sedation. So they give it to children 1.5 older and 1.5 and older for surgeries because of the safety profile. Here's one of the big stigmas. Hey, isn't ketamine a horse tranquilizer? Yes. Ketamine is so safe that they use it on animals as well because of the safety profile. A cat is a good example. Any other kind of anesthesia out there would kill a cat, but ketamine is so safe, you can give it to cats too. So like if my 6-year-old needed surgery, they would use ketamine on him because it's so safe. I had like a tummy tuck done about 5.5 months ago because I lost 111 pounds. They used ketamine on my surgery because it was so safe. Not that I'm a huge fan of or want to say it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's on the World Health Organization's top 10 essential medications. So like people really have this negative perspective on ketamine, but like it's been utilized for like a half a century.
Yeah, yeah. The things that you don't know until you know. Charles, so ketamine, is that something that you have to ask for at the hospital, or do they give it to you by default, or how
So
do
like
you get it?
I mean, for us at my clinic, people come to us specifically for ketamine therapy. If one of my stepsons, he just turned 18, but when he was 13, he fell off a bike and he dislocated his arm. And when he got to the hospital, they gave him ketamine so they could reset his arm. It's like, it's also, used in operating rooms for surgeries, ambulances. Ketamine is on the back of every ambulance out there. And if somebody's being combative in the middle of public, they will actually give them a much, much larger dose of ketamine on the spot than we're doing at my facility because of the safety profile for it. So it's like it's being used in a ton of different ways. It's just a lack of public education about this. And then listen, I want to go ahead and address it because I'm sure people are like, but isn't that what killed Matthew Perry? Okay, it's like, no. So after a deep dive with the autopsy, I took a look at everything, and it's just not me. It's like, doctors and friends alike. Matthew Perry was on a cocktail of different medications. Okay. He was on a benzodiazepine. He was on buprenorphine, which is basically like Suboxone or Subutex. It's an opiate blocker. And he was recreationally abusing ketamine, where his assistant supposedly had administered it 27 times in like a 48-hour period. All right. But listen, ketamine's an anesthetic surgery, right? So like, you take a big enough dose of it, lights go out, and then you wake up, you don't remember the surgery. Well, if you were to get into a bed of water and you had an anesthetic dose of ketamine in you, it means you'd probably like go into an anesthetic state, go under the water, drown, and then people would be like, oh, ketamine killed him. But it's not really what happened. And so like, no, it's a very unfortunate situation. This is why My Self Wellness, our facility, does not send ketamine home with people. There are other companies out there where you can get at-home ketamine and stuff like that. I'm going to sit here right now and say I took a stance against this a long time ago. We do not do that. I think it's reckless. And I think I can give you a million positive stories about how it's helping people heal, but that's not what's going to make the headlines. It's going to be the one unfortunate situation where somebody takes it in a hot tub and something very bad.
Yeah. Now that actually makes me think that, because you mentioned how they give ketamine to kids and they forget, they have a surgery and stuff. Because like, I think somewhere under 13 years old, I broke this arm in 4 different places. And I remember they gave me something that I was in and out of them putting my arm back together. I remember screaming and then going back out. And then I woke up and then my mom's there and then I'll go back out and stuff. I wonder if that was ketamine because I remember a little bit of it, but not a whole lot of it. So when you mentioned that, I'm thinking, I wonder if it was ketamine. That was like 30 something years ago plus. So
yeah, no, I'm sure it probably was. Like, listen, like they don't use ketamine on adults as much anymore. They still use it on kids all the time. But the reason that they don't is because a lot of people, when they have ketamine for surgery or something like that, have these experiences. Okay. And so, like, adults are coming out of surgeries and they're like, did I die? I met God. I was with angels, like and the doctors couldn't explain it and it was throwing people for a loop. But children can have a very magical experience and it doesn't really throw them for a loop. And so it's not used as much in adults as it is with.
Interesting. Interesting. Just if a kid comes out and says some kind of magical experience, it's like, as a kid, imagination, he had a nice sleepy time. But when an adult comes out of it, they're like, yeah, let's suppress that situation.
You can go online right now and like Google or like go on YouTube and type in like ketamine and children experiences. And there's literally videos of kids that are in the hospital that are being administered ketamine and they're talking about being with Jesus. Like, I'm with Jesus right now. And they're like having a full conversation with like Jesus or angels or these kind of experiences. And it's like on film. You can literally watch it happening in real time in a way. And so it's like, it's not just me. And it's not just like, I know it sounds crazy to most people out there that would be like, oh, they're just high on drugs. But like, the thing is that it's funny because like, even at our facility, people come out and they're talking about the same kind of experiences and they've never spoke to anybody before about it. They like, like it's not like a shared experience or whatever. It's being described in a very similar fashion continuously over and over and over again. And so that's when you got to take a look at this kind of stuff and say, hey, listen, like there might be something to this.
Yeah. You mentioned Jesus, especially also when you had your interaction, your encounter and stuff. So if you're not a religious guy, why do you think Jesus appeared to you?
You know what, man? Listen, like, I think Jesus was an ascended master, and like the thing is too, is like, listen, like, I don't think that there's any hierarchy either though. So like my personal beliefs is that like, I think Jesus had a massive awakening and realized that we were all it and probably went around trying to tell everybody and that wasn't really good and ended up getting him into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And so like the thing is that like, I think that anybody that gets out here and starts telling messages like that, I mean, listen, like it goes against the narrative and then that takes away the controlling power. It's like, oh, wait a second, like you mean we're all on the same playing field here and like I don't need to take orders from somebody because we're all it, and so like I think that and I don't know why Jesus came to me, but I can tell you this though, like on another DMT experience where I was on another ship with a bunch of little beings and this was actually like, then listen, like I don't take psychedelics. I'll get into that in a minute, but this was like 6 years ago. Okay. It was probably almost like maybe closer to 7 years ago, 6.5 years ago. And so like I was in another industry. I was working for an international PR company. I got back from Mexico from a trade show and I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing what I was doing. I was like at this trade show out at dinner with a bunch of CEOs, high profile people. And I'm like, everybody's talking about business. And I'm like, yeah, DMT, MDMA, it's like saved my life. And I came back and I'm just like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. And so I was like, I'm going to do some DMT. I'm going to see if I get some guidance. And I ended up on another ship, all of these little beings. And there was like these big, giant, like tubes, like where I could tell they were like genetically like working on different species of aliens and people. And there was like children on the ship, like with blonde hair, like white hair almost with these big, big eyes. I would say they were like star children, right? And I look outside the window of the ship and I see Vishnu, like blue Hindu god with all of the arms, and he's like DJing energy fields over all of the planets with his arms. And so it's like, I never even considered him in my head. And so it's like, yeah, Jesus came to me, but like I also had a Vishnu experience and I was never raised that way. So like here's the thing, is like I think there's a lot more to this. Or like another DMT experience before I tell what the message was. I was up in these rooms with like Buddha and Hanuman and like all of these people, like I didn't even know who they were. And it was like the highest vibrational place I think you could probably go to, where I was in a room with all the gods. And so it's like, it wasn't just a Christian kind of experience for me. It was almost all of it. But when I was on that ship, when I was looking for this like guidance, and I saw Vishnu DJing all the energy or whatever, all of a sudden this massive flood comes into my brain, this download. And it's like, you're supposed to quit your job and you're supposed to take a leap of faith and start this company that's going to help people heal. And it's not really a leap of faith because you're in divine synchronicity with the universe and everything. And so I go upstairs at that time and, Chris, because I did it at home, which I don't suggest people recreationally use psychedelics. It's not my message. But I went upstairs and I said to Christina, I said, listen, I said, I'm going to quit my job and we're going to take a leap of faith and start this company to help people heal. And she's like, yeah, we have a 6-month-old son and you are not quitting your job to take a leap of faith because we need security and you sound crazy right now. Yeah, aliens told you to do this or whatever. And I'm like, listen, if I went through 20 years worth of misery and don't use what helped me to help other people, it seems like a waste of 20 years of my life. And so reluctantly, but supportingly, she was like, all right, let's do it. And so I quit my jobs, took a leap of faith. We started my self-wellness and we did our first treatment a week before the lockdown. And so I'm like, the hardest time in history to start a company. We were an essential business because we were a medical facility. And I'm like, it's just a test. I'm like, it's just a test. We have to keep our vibration high, utilize the laws of attraction, keep on helping the next person first, and everything else is going to fall into place. And fast forward to where we're at now, we're roughly coming up on around like 20,000 treatments that we've done from our facility. We have over a 90% success rate. And that means getting people symptom relief, getting people off all their pharmaceutical medications, getting people off fentanyl addiction, alcohol abuse problems, cocaine addiction. And so it's like, now you've got to ask yourself, was this just a trip or was it real? Did I really receive this message that I was supposed to be doing this? And like, I'll go ahead and take it even further because I'm ready to actually talk about it now. And I haven't for the last 2 years. But so like out of the synchronicity of the universe, now I am, one of the founders of a new company that's getting ready to get launched called Elusis. And it's a resort in the Caribbean where we are going to be the first place to offer extended state DMT to people that you can come have these experiences with government approval. It's legal and it's a beautiful resort where not only are we allowed to use DMT, but we have a license to utilize every psychedelic compound on the planet. And I'm working with some incredible people, one of them being Dr. Andrew Gallimore, who created the DMTX protocol with Rick Strassman. And so it's like, I'm here with messages I received on DMT like a decade ago that I was supposed to do all of this stuff, making contact with entities. And now, the work I'm getting ready to do is based around healing people and contact with entities. And so it's like, listen, there was a study that was done not long ago at Imperial College of London by a scientist named Chris Timmerman. And so I'm like, between him and Andrew, like these guys are like, the holy grail of DMT other than Rick right now. And we're collaborating with him as well. But the thing is that during his study at Imperial, they were sending people into DMTX experiences and people were making contact with the same beings, retrieving the same information, bringing it back from these experiences and talking about it. And the way that we started getting ready to collaborate with Chris was I was in Colorado at something called Psychedelic Science. And it's like the biggest psychedelic conference in the world. And one of my friends invited me to a party, very private party that I wasn't invited to. And I get there with Christina and a couple of my other team members. And like, it's all like these like scientists and pioneers in the industry. It's like, there's celebrities there and everything. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's like, it's at a private house and there's a dinner and everything. And the guys that are throwing the party, they come up to me and they're like, who are you? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm Charles. I'm one of the founders of Elusis. And I start telling them about my self-wellness or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'm not supposed to be here. And they're like, yeah, we know. And I was like, but I think I am supposed to be here. And they're like, yeah, you are. And so It just happened that Chris Timmerman was at that party. Okay. And so I walk up to him and I'm like, hey, man, I'm like, you're the man. Like, I was like, yeah, I thank you so much for all the work you've done. Hey, had these experiences years ago, and I was telling him about all of the stuff that happened to me. And his study at Imperial was like, are these experiences real? And I was just like, so listen, do you want my take on it? And he's like, yeah. And I said, I got contact and I had these messages to do everything that I'm doing in my life. And I followed it like a blueprint, like it was the message from the universe, and I took it seriously. And I said, now I'm standing in Colorado at a party that I wasn't invited to, talking to Chris Timmerman. And I said, and here we are talking about DMTX. And I said, so what do you think, man? I go, because I know they're real. And so it was like at that moment where he kind of looked at me and I looked at him and we gave each other a big hug. And it was like, all right, dude, like let's try to do some amazing work, man. But like, it's like, so I can talk mental health and I can talk neuroplasticity and I can talk about a number of different things. But like at the end of the day, this is about the transformation of humanity to a higher state of consciousness. At the end of the day, this is about raising the collective vibration of this planet. And I truly believe that at the end of the day, that this is all going to lead to some sort of disclosure. Because from one of my experiences, they're already here, man. They're just at a different frequency. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the truth is, like, here's your beyond the frequency, right? It's like, they're just at a different frequency, man. They're not in physical form. And so the thing is that once and I'm sure that there are some that are, okay? Don't get me wrong. But once we keep on raising the vibration, a lot more is going to be presented to us than meets the eye. And that was one of the questions that I asked during my first experience when I was on that first ship a long time ago. I was like, how come you don't tell anybody that you're real? The answer I got was, people aren't ready. It would send the society into a complete shutdown. Like, it's like people would be scared to leave their houses. And the truth is that the funniest part behind all of it is like, they love us so much, man. Like, that was the message that I got the whole time. It's like, we love you. We want to help you. We're trying to guide you all of the time. And, a lot of people would have came out of that experience and said, wow, what a crazy trip. And I was just like, okay, here we go. Let's see how far we can take it.
That's the Charles. That's the perspective that I'm at. My understanding is that it's all love. These beings, if they're in our frequency, it's because of love. But there's a lot of people that you've probably come across as well that don't feel like it's all about love. They feel like these entities are here with some malintent. They're demonic. They're here to possess you, to control things. When you come across people like that, and you're talking about love, and they're talking about the opposite, how do you balance that conversation?
So, like, I can tell you what my truth is, and it might not sit well with some people, but it's just,
That's it.
Everything's perfect, and it always has been.
Yeah.
And so it's like, whether you want to think these experiences are good, bad, or whatever, I think it's all just a concept, because good and bad are concepts. I think that everything, when we're talking about Hermetic philosophy, it's just polarities, right? And so it's like, listen, like, I definitely think that you could say there's some dark stuff going on, but that's a concept. And like, so it's like, I think that this is the evolution of consciousness. And so I know that sometimes we have to go through the dark to get to the light.
Yeah.
And so like, do I think that all of these beings are benevolent and having, a good intention for everything? Maybe not. I've never really encountered any like that, but I'm sure if there's the ones that I met that are all love and light, I'm sure there has to be an under end of the spectrum too. But like in the oneness of everything, where separation is an illusion and this is all just a concept, this is the synchronistic flow of the evolution of consciousness. I didn't get to where I'm at because I lived a life of roses and rainbows. I went through some seriously dark times in my life. And so like, I'm not saying it was good or bad. It just is. But like, I used to look up at the sky when I was hooked on opiates and I'd be dope sick. And I'd be like, God, why are you doing this to me? How come I can't get my life together? How come I can't get sober? I just want to be like everybody else. But like, now I look back at those times and I'm like, thank you. I'm like, I get it now. Through my suffering, I found awakening. Through my suffering, I found my purpose. And now it's my purpose to be of service and help other people. come out of that dark place. But like one of the things that's very powerful about like my being, like who I am is I've been through it, man. And so people actually listen to me and they trust me and they take me seriously because like I've walked a mile in their shoes. Oh, you're shooting dope? I've been there. And you can completely transform your life. You have a felony charge and you think that is the end for you and you can't ever make something of yourself. I've been there and it's not true because I am. And so it's just like these are all the limited beliefs that we place upon ourselves and us looking at things like bad. Like, listen, I live a life of stoicism now where it's like, it used to be, why is this happening to me? Then it went to, why is this happening for me? And then now I'm at a different place where it's, what is consciousness learning?
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. You know, and I've mentioned the same thing too in the past that, you know, good and bad is a label, you know, that we put on the experience. Because at the end of the day, it's just an experience. And a lot of people are just stuck in the, oh, this is bad. They're in that victim mentality, like you spoke about. And it's hard for them to get out of it. So on that same note, there's somebody right now, Charles, that is in their darkest day as they're listening to this or watching this. What would you tell them as advice for how they can change their life starting today?
It's not over. You can do it. Don't look at where you're at right now as your final destination. Just look at it as a stepping stone in getting to the place that you want to be or need to be. And so it's like we go through the dark to get to the light so we can be of service and go back in the dark and help other people out. All right. And so it's like, if you're going through some seriously dark times right now, it's not punishment, it's preparation. All right. You just have to keep on going. You have to keep on pushing through it. Discipline, like get in there and really like work at this. Like, you know, it's like find what's dark about my life and start taking any action that you can to pull yourself out of that dark place. But never think that this is something that is happening to me because, like you were saying, the victim mentality where it's just like, I was just dealt this crappy hand and this is my life forever. If you keep on going and keep on healing, you will get to the place eventually where you have that aha moment. And you're like, oh my gosh, I get it now. I know why I went through that. It's because I was supposed to help people in this way. And if I wouldn't have went through that suffering, I wouldn't be equipped to actually lead people out of that situation.
Absolutely. Well said, Charles. Charles, on a personal note, you've been through so much in your life, but you're just a man trying to live your life, have your human experience. So what's something that still makes you laugh or gives you joy no matter what's going on in your life?
Listen, man, like I love like being around good, like-minded, high vibrational people that don't see limitations and we can build together and really make an impact. What makes me laugh and have a good time is being around friends or family or like my son. I love him so much. He's so much fun to be around. And you know, and it's like, listen, like I get my joy out of going through the process of this transformation. I mean, listen, like I'm in a great place now, but like I keep on leveling up. And that's what this is. You know, it's funny. I tell people life is like a video game, right? We, you know, whether you believe it's a simulation or not, but it's like Mario Brothers always comes to mind. Okay. It's like, what did Mario do? He like ran around, he ate Amanita muscaria mushrooms, which are a psychedelic mushroom. And it would like grow him into this bigger, better version of himself. And then he was going through the levels and leveling up. And so I kind of like look at myself like Mario sometimes. It's just like, you know, hey man, like listen, like it's sometimes it's not easy going through the levels, but knowing that when I'm uncomfortable and when I'm going through it, it's because I'm being molded into the person that I need to be to receive the manifestations that I put out into the universe.
Yeah, I every time I hear about the comparison of how we're in a video game, I've never heard the Mario one. That's a good one, especially with you and the mushrooms and everything. him growing to be bigger than what he is, and then have a bigger perspective of life. I love that. You mentioned family and friends, Charles. Like, how has your personal life, friends, family, relationships, how have they shifted since you stepped into this new version of yourself?
I'm like not. I'm good to be around now because I wasn't for a long time. You know, like my family couldn't stand me, and like people didn't want to be around me because I was reckless and I was always high, or you know, I wasn't fun to be around. And listen, like I hold myself accountable these days. If I say I'm going to be there for somebody, if I say I'm going to do something, I am. I'm a man of my word now. And I embody what I preach, man. I'm not just sitting here like, you know, oh, yeah, like it's like I really live this, and on a daily basis. I am exactly who I say I am. And I'm not perfect by any means, but like, you know, I'm always continuously working to become a better and better version of myself. I'm the father that I didn't have growing up that I wish I would have had. And you know what, like that, and I can acknowledge that. And I'm very proud of that because my son is everything that I wish that I was when I was his age. Not that I'm not grateful for everything that I went through to get to where I'm at, but like, you know, like he does breath work and he's like, you know, meditates here and there. And he, you know, he talks about the matrix and like, just like he literally is like super lit, man. He's an enlightened little boy that was given all of the love that, you know, I wish I would have had. Even when it comes to like cymatics and cymatic frequencies, like when he was a baby, I used to hold him up like this and I would just sit there and go, and I would speak that onto him. So like if anybody knows about the Dr. Emoto studies where, you know, they took the water molecules and they said different things to him, it's like, our words are more powerful than we could possibly imagine. So be mindful not only what you say to other people, but especially what you say about yourself, because we are programming ourselves at a cellular level to become.
Man, Charles, another well spoken spiel there. That's awesome. I love that. And when you talk about your son, I saw the light in you. You lit up a little bit there, and I love seeing that. Appreciate you sharing that with me and everybody else. I feel the same way about I have a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old sons, and I think they're me 2.0. You know, everything like you said, everything that I wasn't, they are who that, and then hopefully they pass it on to those. So I resonate with that. All right. So, Charles, as we are wrapping up this episode, I always like to ask these questions to all my guests. They're the same questions that I've asked everybody else. There's no right or wrong answer, just yours. Are you ready for this? Okay. Beyond all the knowledge and experience that you've gained, what still leaves you in awe and still makes you question everything?
So, all right. What leaves me in awe or makes me question everything is like, A, is this a simulation? Or B, is this a manifestation of the collective mind of God that we're nothing separate from? And then like, but back to A, if this is a simulation or a computer simulation of some sort, then are we nothing separate from it? And are we actually all AI? And so like, and listen, like, I don't think that I think that both answers can be right, but the only hiccup, and this is what really leaves me in awe and questioning everything, is like, I think I might be slightly on the spectrum. So I see a lot of things like that might not be noticed. I'm very good at pattern recognition and things like that. And so like, I see glitches in the simulation, or even like when people talk, or even when I talk, sometimes I can feel it stick a little bit and it sounds like there's a glitch within the matrix. And so like at that point, well, if everything was divine and it was all a manifestation of the collective mind of God, I don't know if that imperfectness would be there. But then I was talking to Christina the other night and she's like, maybe it was programmed to be there, like, and it is perfect just because this was supposed to be the little breadcrumbs.
Absolutely. Charles, what is the ultimate purpose of life in your definition?
Love. Listen, man. So like, I am love. God is love. We're all love. We just got to get back to it. And so like, I tell people when they're going through ketamine treatments at my facility, I'm like, think of us as this big onion. And we have all these layers that we need to peel away. And each time you do a treatment, it peels another layer of the onion away until you get to the core of who you truly are. And it's like, that's love. It's all love. We've just got to get back to it. And I truly think that that's what the evolution of what we're going through is. It's all just bringing us back to God, to oneness, to love. And if we're all the droplets of water in the ocean of consciousness and we're the manifestors of reality and the co-creators of existence because we're all the divine, well, then like the more that we heal collectively, the more that we could collectively manifest a utopic scenario, whether you want to call it 5D consciousness. I recently had a conversation with Christina where we actually almost don't even think it's dimensional anymore, but it's actually all frequency. So I would like to refer to it as like the fifth frequency, maybe, because it's all happening and it's already here. It's just at a different frequency.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. People we talked about separation is an illusion. So anytime that we say like it's a different dimensional space or we're transitioning from this to that, it's all talking about separation. So I resonate with what you said. It's all here. We're just changing the meat suit. We are changing our frequency to resonate with it, but it's always here.
So I had an epiphany not long ago. It was like a download I got during a meditative state. It basically was like, if we're all lit, this is just God doing shadow. You know? And like, so like, listen, like, it's like, because don't think of it as good or bad. It's an evolution. It's like this evolution of God, of consciousness, where we had to live in a state of duality so we could learn all of the lessons that needed to be learned. And then once we learn everything that we need from being in a state of duality, we can heal enough collectively, or God can do the shadow work to manifest non-duality, where, you know, it's like, it is that kind of utopic scenario that I truly believe in my heart of hearts that we're actually at.
Yeah. As above, so below, as within, so without, right?
100%.
So if we we as humans, we grow also, and we get better with experience. So this is the micro. The macro is the same thing. The spiritual side of us is doing the same thing. It's just growing.
It's the absolute. It's where I like to live my life. That we're everything, man. We are the stars, the universe, everything, all at the same time. We're just pretending.
Yes. Charles, what is, in your understanding, what is God?
I don't think it's what everybody thinks it is. I'm not sure. I think that, so like, here it goes back to my like question again. I mean, like, so listen, if we're all one collective consciousness, there has to be divine masculine and feminine energy. Okay. So that means that, like, I don't know, is God a guy or a girl? I think that's just a concept. I think that it's divine feminine and masculine energy that manifests into everything that we all are. Like, whether that, you know, like the Big Bang or whatever, I guess you could just call that, like, you know, the beginning of God's dream. But that being said, so then if we have to go to the other end of the spectrum where it's like, is this an AI simulation? Then that leads to much deeper questions like, well, if this is all AI, who created the simulation? Okay. And then Elon's big question where it's like, they asked him, like, you know, if you could ask AI one question and get an answer, what would it be? He said, what's outside the simulation? And so it's like, if this is the simulation, was it created by some sort of extraterrestrial or higher dimensional beings that, you know, listen, man, for all we know, we could be sitting on some higher dimensional being's kid's bedroom shelf because we were a science experiment that we don't even realize we were.
Are you telepathic sometimes? Because I was just thinking about the whole scenario of with just on some kid's computer or whatever, and then you mentioned that, so that's kind of cool.
So I will say this, that if we're all one collective consciousness or whatever we are, then we're all connected already.
We're all connected already. Yeah. I love that. Charles, in your understanding, in your definition, what's love?
Love would be like the highest vibrational place on the spectrum. I guess you could say. So like if there was a polarity where like it was all on this thing that was like it was like on this linear place where it's like on one end of the spectrum you have the lowest vibrational place, which could be like, you know, hate, lust, and like all of like, I hate to, not getting religious with it, but probably what would be considered all the sins, right? They say like, you know, gluttony, lust, hate, like all of these things, separation, competition, like all of that kind of scenario would be lower vibrational states. And like that would be like where the dark or the black moves into the red, and like all of through the spectrum of light. I think that love would be where it's, what's the color of purple that's at the highest end of the spectrum? It's like the light purple.
Yeah,
like a violet. But like, so like I think that like love would be all of the positive, beautiful things, the non-separation, the oneness, the high vibrational place where, you know, we're working symbiotically as one rather than running in all these different directions in a competitive state of mind where we're causing more chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, competition is killing us right now, just in all aspects, right? If you could go back in time to talk to, you know, little young Charles figuring things out, teenage Charles, what would you tell him today?
Stay in your breath. Stay in your breath, man. It's all going to be okay. It's actually going to be better okay. It's going to be the most amazing life you could have ever possibly imagined having. And when you're feeling down, just know that everything's magic, everything's magical, and your life is going to be more magical than you could ever.
Yeah, I love it. I talked to a person offline, same question, and they actually told me that it came full circle to them. They were young. And an entity appeared to them, gave them some advice, things like that. They took that advice and ran with it. Fast forward, as an adult, they were able to do outer body experiences. They ended up tapping back into that time point, you know, to that period in time, and then they reflected and realized that was me that went back and told myself that. And it came full circle. It was a beautiful thing the way he told his story. But so that's why I like to ask that question there.
Well, hey, hold on real quick, man.
Nice.
So like this is where Ram Dass comes through, right? It's like we're all just here to walk each other home, back to oneness, right? So like it's like, believe it or not, people think that synchronicity is something outside of them. And it's like, oh, this is the universe giving me signs or angel numbers that I'm heading in the right direction. And I used to be there. I used to believe this, right? Until you actually realize one day that your synchronicity itself, that your higher self is the one that led all of these breadcrumbs here to bring you back home to oneness.
Nah, absolutely, Charles. 110%. We're always indoctrinated to believe and programmed to believe that everything's outside of us. Like if you're sick, don't heal yourself because you don't know anything. Go to a doctor. If something's wrong with your head, don't talk to yourself because you're crazy. Go to a therapist. You know, if you want support and guidance, don't look inward, look outward. Look out to the universe, but no one ever teaches you to go into the inverse. You know, so this is that thing that we need to spread to everybody and tell everybody you're powerful. Remember who you are. You've always been that, you know. Charles, how can people find you if they want to reach out to you and support everything that you're doing today?
So my Instagram handle is Charles_Patti_official. On Facebook, I'm just Charles Patti, Patti. If you want to check out my clinic, My Self Wellness, it's myselfwellness.com. That's where we do our ketamine therapy. And if you are interested in taking part in DMTX at Eleusis, it's Eleusis, ELEUSIS, mind.com.
Absolutely. And folks, I will have all those links below in the description so you'll be able to scroll down after the show, click and go and enjoy it.
Love it.
Charles, before we wrap things up here and I go out to my outro, is there a last piece of advice, a message that you would like to leave with the audience?
So like with what you just talked about, the only way out is in. Okay. And then on top of that, like, listen, like I am the I am and so are you and we're all it. We're just pretending that we're not. So I guess my biggest message to everyone out there would be observe without judgment And remember that the answer is always love.
Well said. And Charles, I could speak to you for hours. We have a whole lot more to talk about. And hopefully you had a good time today on this episode. And hopefully you'll be able to come back for a part 2 and get to hit some other topics as well. It was a pleasure having you on here. And we'll definitely stay connected after this show as we continue moving on with our own journeys as well. And folks, don't forget, I have a website, beyondthefrequency369.com. You'll find all the information that you need to learn more about me, my mission, my goal. It's all about remembering who you are before the world convinces you otherwise. See if it resonates with you. Watch the episodes. It's not about the message and the conversation that's being had, but it's the fact that you're listening, and something in that episode triggers a remembrance in you to go do something greater and pass that on forward. So with that being said, folks, I love you. I see you. I hear you. I am you. Continue to ask questions. Don't be afraid to pull back the curtain. Take a deeper look. Push forward. Always reaching beyond the frequency.